What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Corey's Garage, brought to you by Reese Motorsports, home of the Franken-7 Drift Car RX-7 project. I last left you with trying to start the engine, was that yesterday? Yesterday. And unfortunately, that did not work out so well. Everything was looking good. As you saw in the video, it turned over. We could hear the fuel pump priming. We didn't have any oil leaks or coolant leaks or fuel leaks, which is really good. So there was some good stuff that happened there. I did find a couple of grounds that I had missed after the video. I went back and just looked over the harness and got online immediately, just trying to talk to some LS friends and people online to see, where to start troubleshooting. And come to find out, since this engine was kind of, I thought it was an LM4 to begin with, and then later found out it's basically a L33, and it's got Gen 4 electronics, or I guess it had mostly Gen 4 electronics. So what that means, and what you'll hear a lot of LS people talk about, is the 24X and 58X, I think that's right, reluctor wheels, which is, if you know much about cars, basically like an ABS sensor. Has this ring with these little fingers all around it, and a little magnetized sensor, and every time one of those fingers goes by, it gets a signal. And so essentially that reluctor wheel works the same way, but for the crank position sensor. So what that means is this engine has the 58 tooth reluctor wheel, and it has an LS1 computer and LS1 harness set up for a 24 tooth reluctor wheel. So what's happening is, and thankfully I was able to get a code from my code reader hooked up to the ECU, which is one nice thing about this harness is it has OBD2 port. So I was able to put my code reader on there, and it gave me a 1336, a P1336. Basically, it wasn't picking up the crank position sensor. Something about has not learned or cannot learn or something like that. But essentially, it's sending the signal, but the computer doesn't know what to do with it. It's either too much or too little. So, got to talking to some people online about that, and the options are you can tear apart the engine and replace the reluctor ring with a 24 tooth. You can try to get a Gen 4 computer, but it has different plugs, and rewire it back up for this engine. Or option 3, I found Lingenfelter makes a conversion module, they call it. I forget the part number, but basically you kind of put it in line between the crank position sensor and the wire, and it basically converts the signal back to a 24 tooth or 24 X reluctor wheel signal, and then your ECU can pick it up, and then hopefully it starts. Direct from Lingenfelter, they're about $274. I found one from some no-name website, but it was the Lingenfelter part for $94. So I jumped on that. So I checked the PayPal, it went through. It seems like a legit seller, but it's just kind of a no-name thing that came up on Google, so I gave it a shot. Actually, when I went looking through the website, apparently it's a shoe sales website, so I don't know why they would have a Lingenfelter conversion module for crank position sensor signals, but the price was right, so I figured why not. So hopefully that'll be here this week. This is day 3 of my 3-day weekend, so every other weekend I get 3 days off. So now we'll start my long week, so I have 6 straight days to go until I'm off again. So I probably won't get to do too much with it, but I did make a little progress tonight. And to wet the whistle. So I didn't want to waste my last off day, so I went ahead and attempted to bleed the brakes. My little cheapo $30 from 7 years ago, 8 years ago air bleeder from Harbor Freight. I guess it just isn't that good, or was never that good. So anyways, I'll have to have my wife or my neighbor or somebody help me pump the pedal and bleed the brakes the old-fashioned way here soon. But you know, I got fluid to come out of them, so that's good. It just wouldn't build up enough pressure. So got that started. The handbrake is officially mounted. I had to alter one of the mounting bolts to the little pedestal I made. So one of the Allen heads was kind of rounded and too fat to fit up against the flat piece. So I just kind of ground off one side just to make it flat and have something to bite onto. So tightened all that up, and so that's good to go. I do still need to get one more little brake fitting to run the T fitting to run the rear calipers. So I'll try to pick that up tomorrow before work. Oh, I changed the transmission fluid. There was hardly anything in it, so I'm glad I went ahead and changed it. And I changed the rear diff fluid. I also hooked up the vacuum line for the brake booster, so to the back of the back of the intake manifold, and moved my jack stands around a little bit so I could get access to the V-bands on the headers. And the driver's side, I was just test fitting the other part of the V-band and the actual clamp, and I got plenty of room. The passenger side, it's pretty much touching the frame rail. So, but one good thing is it's not touching the starter anymore, because I was really not looking forward to having to take the header off again and beat on one of those tubes that I turned a round tube into a uppercase D shape. So I was really not looking forward to having to take that off a third time and bang the snot out of it. So clear the starter, we're good to go. I got a little bit more of that, so I'll put that the rest of the way on the starter and should be fine there. I made a little grommet for the starter main power wire and the signal wire that are going through the floor. So I made a little rubber grommet connector or rubber grommet piece to shield those from getting cut on the sheet metal. And let's see, what else did we do? Yeah, just opened up my Bel Air dual exhaust 3-inch exhaust pipe kit just to kind of see what the pieces look like, and I think they'll be really usable actually. I don't know how it's going to fare using a Sawzall and a cutoff wheel. I really wish I had a chop saw. So if anyone has a smoking deal on a chop saw, I would really appreciate it. Or if anyone wants to loan me theirs when it comes to exhaust day, which that won't be, you know, that'll probably be one of the last things, basically that and then painting. But yes, because I'm going to try to make my own exhaust, but it's going to take a lot of wire. It's going to take some precision cuts and a lot of patience. But looking forward to it. It'd be fun to say I basically built my entire car. So that's exciting. So I just wanted to give you guys a little update on that. Yes, it was unfortunate that it did not start. I was really looking forward to it, but I kind of had a feeling, just, you know, not to be pessimistic, but you always have that that feeling in the back of your mind that, like, this may or may not start. It might have been something I forgot. So it's not so much I forgot anything. I mean, I did find those 2 grounds that, you know, I'm sure it'll help in the long run with it actually starting and running, but it didn't help, you know, particularly with this situation. But I was aware in the back of my mind about that whole 24X, 58X reluctor wheel deal. So, but I was more concerned about that for some reason when I was looking at cams, but evidently that wasn't an issue. So, but with crank position sensors, they are different from Gen 3 LS motors to Gen 4. And this one is kind of an in-between, but it does have some Gen 4 stuff on there. So it'd be great if it had the Gen 4 rods. Apparently they're better, but I don't know. But yeah, so hopefully this isn't a scam thing I found, because it was like the 3rd search result on Google when I was looking for that conversion module. So hopefully that shows up in a few days. It showed that it shipped, so we'll see. So if that shows up and I can figure out how to wire that in and make that work, that'll be sweet, because then this thing should fire right up. I mean, I went ahead and put oil in it. I filled the coolant up. I mean, obviously it has to, you know, burp and bleed. Automotive terms, not to be weird. Get the air out of the system. And I guess put the axles in. The diff is in. The diff has been in, but put the axles in. And bleed the brakes, bleed the clutch. and then it's ready to at least drive, and then build the exhaust and paint it. So there's not too much left to do. I was glad to get the battery box mounted, to get all the wiring done. That was a time-consuming process. I mean, it was fun. It was just, you know, you had to get your idea out of your head onto paper and then onto the car. So that was kind of the challenging thing. So I had this weird schematic drawn out, and my wife looked at it when I was doing it. She's like, "I'm so glad you know what you're doing, because I look at that and I have no idea what I'm looking at." So that was pretty funny. But yeah, it just comes with time, comes with doing it, and I'm a visual person, so I can get a good idea, but I have to somehow get it to where I can physically see it with my eyes, and then I can, make it happen. So, yeah, not too many challenges with that. The only real challenge I ran into was I'm pretty sure the fuel pump relay is bad. So I didn't want the fuel pump to work off the key, because I wanted to be able to turn it over and build oil pressure without, if it was going to prematurely start up. So I tried to isolate the relay and have that just in the circuit with the switch for the fuel pump. So I don't know if it was that, or I think it was just a bad relay. I mean, it's 34 years old, so I mean, electrical things do break down. I mean, half the wiring in this thing is probably crunchy, so I'm glad the big important wires are new. And I'm glad all the, suspension bolts and shifter bolts and everything that has to bear a load, it's all grade 8 or better. So I'm pretty sure the car is going to be solid. And I was just underneath there a few minutes ago looking at some of the rust repair and stuff I did, and just thinking back over the journey with this thing. It's just like, man, it really has come a long way. I mean, it looked nice when I first got it and pulled it up the driveway. And then, as I started taking it apart and diving into it and realized, man, this thing is a rusty turd. I probably should have waited. But at any rate, I learned a good skill. I learned how to do some rust repair. It cost more to do certain things because, had it been a Southern car, I probably wouldn't have had to have all the bushings and all that crap replaced on the rear. I mean, it was good that I did, and I probably would have wanted to anyways if I wanted it to be a serious competitive car. But, had it been a Southern car, I probably could have just got by with swapping the diff and calling it good. But, like, for instance, one of the last suspension things, I guess, is the rear sway bar bolts are seized in their little bushings, and so I can't even turn them in their bushings to screw them into the trailing arm. So I'm either going to have to get some adjustable rear sway bar links, or just not run a rear sway bar. I don't know if it makes a difference or not. I've got the strut tower bars, which I figured they would kind of help, tie it up a little bit. And I'm thinking about, since I do have like harnesses for the driver's side, I might do the old, because I've heard it's bad to wrap the harnesses straight down the back of the seat, or even in the stock seatbelt locations, because something about if you're in a collision, it can compress your spine and break your back. So I don't want that to happen. But most of the time, someone has a roll cage or at least a harness bar, and they put the harnesses about shoulder level and back. I'm wondering if I can just mount them and roll up the excess, if there is any at that point, up onto the to the rear strut bar, and what would that look like? So I might play around with that. We'll see. It's a 4-point Tanaka harness, so it's basically a eBay harness, but a lot of people run them. Of course, I would want Takata, but I think those are like $250 or $300 for the harness, which they're nice, and I'm sure they're worth it. I just didn't want to put money in seatbelts when I do still have the factory seatbelt, and I also have this Takata harness that I only used for one event in my old Hyundai Genesis Coupe drift car, and that that engine pop. So that's where this seat came from. That's where this harness came from. Yeah. So, anyways, I'm starting to ramble. It's getting late. It's not as late as usual. It's a little after 2, so I'm gonna wrap this up. But I go back to work in tomorrow. So I don't know what I'll get done the next few days. I'm gonna go tomorrow, I think, and just get I've got to modify this passenger side header where the V-band is. I've got to basically cut it and kind of like bend it down just so it's not sitting up against the frame rail. So I'm going to have to get some Sawzall blades. I've got some cutoff discs, but you know, sometimes the cutoff wheel is just hard to work with, especially laying underneath the car. So I got to get just a fresh pack of blades, no big deal. And then at Napa, I still need to get one more brake fitting. I need to take back a drill bit I didn't use and take back a elbow I didn't use. So maybe that'll be a wash. That'll be nice. Trying to think if there's anything else. I think that's it for right now. Cleaned up the toolboxes a little bit, so they look a lot better. It was looking like a horrendous mess in here. So I'm sure my wife will be thrilled when I can finally get the car out of here and clean the garage and reorganize it. And I'm looking forward to it as well, just because you know, I know she's going to want to park her car in here this winter, obviously, and I'm going to want to park this in here this winter for sure. And you know, the old Jeep can just sit outside like it always does. But thank you guys for watching. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for your support. I joke about only having 25 subscribers, but hey, you guys are the first, and hobly the first of many great videos and many great things in the future. You know, building this car, it's not just a hobby. I mean, for me, it's therapy. It's relief from just stressful life, and hopefully later it'll be a tool to, you know, meet people, get plugged in communities, maybe make some businesses or business things happen, maybe make new friends, hopefully not make any enemies, and you know, bring some people together. So we'll see, but appreciate your guys' support, and yeah, look forward to seeing you again soon.